President's Taskforce on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream on setting up and mastering the basics of home VO studios, produced in partnership with the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel. Now, please welcome today's host, SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pam. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well. I'm going to keep my remarks short today because we have a lot of ground to cover. I think it's actually very exciting, this topic. I'm excited about our presentation. The past, actually, couple of months, we've been hosting some pretty exceptional webinars on everything from filing taxes to self-taping auditions to maintaining physical and emotional balance during this incredibly challenging time, the pandemic. And I have to say that thousands of members have tuned in, which is actually an indication to us, shows us that it's a very vital way for SAG-AFTRA to help navigate some of the unique challenges that we're experiencing as a result of the productions being shut down. So today's topic, setting up a home voiceover studio, could not be more relevant. I actually am able to do it at home and I'm very grateful. I'm stuck on, the fact I've been talking to members around the country, how resilient we all are. So many of you actually have been able to look at ways to do work. And in understanding that right now, so much of our business is stopped, you're looking to say, what can I do instead of just the typical things I've done in the past? So until we're able to return to what we know, for the seasoned voiceover professionals among you, that might mean taking on the technical side of things. And for those of you who are used to performing in front of the camera, that means learning about voiceover work and exploring if there are opportunities for you that you had not actually realized. As unique as everyone's individual situations may be, there is one common denominator. You need to know how to master the basics of a home voiceover studio if you want to do voiceover work. And that is more important now than ever before, clearly. So who better to educate us than today's presenters? As you all know, today's co-host, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab, is a leading resource for voiceover performers. At the lab, SAG-AFTRA members have access to a state-of-the-art recording facility, and through its programs, members can learn from and train with top voiceover instructions. I've actually had the benefit of that in my instructors, and I am very happy. We have with us today SAG-AFTRA Voiceover Performers Committee National Chair, Keith Farley. Hi, Keith.
Hello, Gabrielle.
Thank you for being here. We also have SAG-AFTRA Foundation National Director of Voiceover Programs, Eric Schuford, excuse me, and Eric actually has been very helpful to my learning how to do this work so that I can record when I'm not necessarily, when I'm traveling. So thank you for that, Eric.
Sure.
And SAG-AFTRA Foundation, Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab Audio Engineer and Booth Director, Mike Barella.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. This is a very good team. So I want to share a bit of background. Well, actually, we're going to let the presenters speak in a moment about themselves. I also want to include Robert Marshall, who's the co-founder of Source Element, which is the company behind Source Connect, one of the ways that people are working to do their voiceover work, and you'll hear more about that. So I promise to keep my remarks short, but there are a few things that I want to add before we start. First, I actually want to take a moment to introduce our Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon. Rebecca, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you. It's going to be good. Rebecca will be taking over as I have to go back to our negotiations, but I wanted to be here with everybody. We're all working around the clock. This is important. I wanted to say before we begin, with our sister guilds and unions, exploring and employers and health experts to develop comprehensive safety protocols. And so we've been so busy doing that. I want you to know that we had last week signed onto the industry-wide Labor Management Safety Committee Taskforce Production Health and Safety Guidelines, otherwise known as the white paper. People may have known about that. It's a jumping off point For the more detailed protocols, we're going to be unveiling soon. So please keep an eye on your inbox for updates coming soon. We know people are anxious about getting back to work, but we have to make sure that we can do it in a very safe way. So we have the white paper that's out there. It's a joint, and then we also are working on a joint union paper that will be coming out to you. Again, please stay connected to that so you can know how we're going to pursue work as the business starts to open up. If you have any questions you want to submit for our guests, you can email us at pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. And we will take the questions, as many as we can today after the presentation. Without further ado, I would like Keith to please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It's great to be here this morning with all of you. If what's been told to me is to be believed, this will be the largest group of actors on any one of these streams by a factor of 2. We're hoping to have close to 5,000 actors here today. And that is just a thrill for me because voiceover has not slowed down. It has not been adversely affected by as much by the COVID virus. And while Disneyland may be shut down, I'll tell you that Disney animation is still cranking. And while the Warner Brothers lot is quiet as can be, that the folks in the video game department and the animation are doing more than ever before. In fact, Looney Tunes, I read this week, is more popular than Game of Thrones. So work for animation and video game actors has not slowed down one iota. And as an actor myself, as a director myself, with 23 years of experience in this business, I know that from firsthand knowledge that this industry is not slowing down. It's only picking up steam. So I'm thrilled to be here today on this really important panel about how you can get in on the work, not just in video games and animation, but also in commercial VO, also in audiobooks, which have not slowed down at all. Actors doing audiobooks work from home all the time. Corporate educational videos, explainers. The VO world continues to grow. And if you've got a home studio, you're not restricted about where you can be to do your work. And the same guidelines that the Blue Ribbon Committee and the white paper outline don't exist when you have a home studio. So it's going to be great today to have some experts who can give you advice on how to set up from the most basic home studio to the most completely soundproof, professional, pristine audio that you can have. So we're lucky today to be here with Eric Schuford, Mike Varela, and Rob Marshall. I'll throw it to you, Eric. If you want to tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the Don LaFontaine voiceover lab at SAG-AFTRA.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Yeah, so my name is Eric Schuford. I'm the National Director of Voiceover Programming for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. We have 2 different studios, one in Los Angeles, which is called the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab, and another facility in New York, which is the EIF Voiceover Lab of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. When I first started, we had one studio, one facility, and that was the DLF, but we've expanded it, which is great. We also do some national programming occasionally, which is excellent as well. And the idea behind the program is simply to pay it forward and to give back to the community. Don LaFontaine was a very generous soul, super successful voiceover actor, but he always had time for folks that were aspiring to get to where he was. He gave back to the community on a regular basis, and the VO Lab came about as a result of that generosity and to continue that mission of giving back to the VO community.
Thank you, Eric. We know we're going to hear a lot from you today about how to set up a home studio, so thank you for that. Mike Varela, you want to tell us a little bit about where you come from and what you do?
Yeah, I am a post-production engineer and director. I work both in the post and the voiceover fields. I have had the privilege of being at the lab since its opening in 2010, so I've been there a long time, which is great. Seen a lot of actors, helped a lot of people. The facility is fantastic. We have state-of-the-art gear, which is great, and the sound space is amazing. So looking forward to get back in there at some point. And I'll be doing the talk today about your home studio with all the technical details. So.
Thank you, Mike. We're also fortunate. For those of you who are working from home, you've certainly heard of Source Elements and Source Connect. They are an industry leader, along with folks like IPDTL, ISDN, for the both of you who still have ISDN, and Phone Patch and other ways here. We're actually really grateful to have Rob Marshall here from Source Elements. Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here today.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. My background is mainly as a post-audio engineer, sound designer, mixer. Started with Source Elements from the beginning. We, way back in the day, used to complain about how expensive and how cumbersome ISDN was, and that's when we had amazing T1 lines for internet connections. And after complaining about it enough, we finally sort of got to work and built the first version of Source Connect in basically 2004, 2005. Here we are, more years later than I want to admit. And yeah, Source Connect's become a mainstay in the voiceover industry, in the film post-production industry, and as well as music and just all types of remote audio. But my background also just as an audio engineer and a post mixer, I think, which I still do to this day, can help out beyond just you know, Source Connect and add my 2 cents in as far as home studios and setups and whatnot. So thank you for having us.
And let me just be clear before we go on that that's not a background from Zoom behind you. That's an actual recording studio.
Yeah, this is my home studio that I have. Yes, I have a
just a little something.
Yeah,
all of us to aspire to.
I don't recommend it. It's kind of like a crackhead.
Well, it's great to have you here, and let's get to the program. Now you know who's going to be on. We've got a really thorough program from the lab, which should answer a lot of your questions if you're curious about how to set up and maintain a recording space, or a home studio, or a travel rig. So I'll turn it over to Eric and Mike for their presentation, and then after that, we'll go to Robert. And we'll hear a little bit about Source Connect, and then we want to make sure we leave lots of time. I've seen, once again, the popularity of this panel is off the charts. 7, 8 pages of questions from members that have already come in, and then we're going to have try to get to as many of those as possible. So I'll stop talking and turn it over to Eric and Mike.
All right, thank you very much. We always start at the beginning. For SAG-AFTRA members, I want you all to know that the services that we offer at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation are free to you. So you have access to the recording studios, to our engineers, to the programming that we offer. That is free to you as a SAG-AFTRA member. In order to become eligible, some of you out there may already be eligible, but if you're not eligible, you'd have to establish a SAG-AFTRA Foundation user account. That's a pretty easy process. I can run you through that really quickly. We're going to do a basic share screen and see if I can pull this up so you can see how this process will work. And we'll reposition that right there. Cool. All right, so initially when you arrive at SAG-AFTRA.Foundation up top, you're going to go over to the sign-in tab, which is on the right side of the screen here for me. You'll click that and you'll see a pop-up window. In that pop-up window, you'll see the option to create a new user account. Once you would click that, you'll fill out the complete application that's there, and at the bottom of that you would save that or sign up, and you'll be emailed a prompt that will in essence just serve as a verification of your email. You click onto that to take you back to the page, and you can then activate your account. That gets you in. So once you sign into the Foundation user account, you will arrive at your welcome page here. In order to get to the application, you go to Performance Programs. You'll see that there is the VoiceOver Labs to the right side of the screen again. You click onto that. You'll scroll down, and in this instance, there's some information here about the lab and what it does. There's contact information here on the other side of the screen. But for all intents and purposes here today, we'll click on the Don LaFontaine VoiceOver Lab link here. You scroll a bit, and you'll see that it asks, how can I use the DLF VoiceOver Lab? The online application link is there for you. You complete the online application. and you then search for an orientation. And you can come back to this page, or you can simply go down to the program calendar, which is always active no matter where you are on the website. By clicking the program calendar, that will take you to all the options that we have available basically that are coming up. And usually for orientations, they're happening online, and we're having them every week now. So they accommodate anywhere from 100 to 500 people, depending on the number of folks that are interested. You can certainly join us that way. When you get to that program calendar, you can just basically highlight voiceover, and you'll see all the programs that are coming up on the voiceover side of things. That's a little slow right now, but I think there are 3 that are set over the next week that we have coming up. So this is where you'd find that programming, as you can see there. So a variety of classes. A lot of times you'll see orientations, you'll see workout groups, you'll see instructor-led courses, you'll see a lot of the tech classes that we offer, specifically on software. We have an Audacity class coming up on Thursday. So there's a host of options that you can utilize when you're at the VO Lab. Coming out of that, this information obviously is on our website and available to you all. Again, I just want to emphasize the fact that it is free as a SAG-AFTRA member. And once we're back in our physical space, it's a pretty interesting process, because once you're in the lab, we teach everyone that is inclined to learn how to use the audio software, whether it's Audacity or Twisted Wave, to get you started. Disclaimer, we don't necessarily endorse either one of those products. However, they are pretty easy to master, so that's how we start you off. Since we don't have that option now, everyone can essentially, once you have eligibility, jump in to the classes that we offer. We ask that you, do so, take full advantage of the program, and it's a good place to learn, a good place to build community, and we're looking forward to meeting you. That's all I got for that. We'll turn the presentation over to Mike Varela, and Mike will take us into the home studio setup. Mike.
Thanks, Eric. Welcome to the talk. I'm going to share my screen here. Behind will be a PDF that all of you should see. See if I can minimize this a bit here. So we host a bunch of online classes now. We were obviously in the space until the coronavirus hit, so we are now doing a lot of stuff online. And both New York and Los Angeles host different classes related to a bunch of stuff in voiceover, classes on how to use gear, how to use software, how to hook up equipment. We do workout groups. We do acting classes as well, voiceover acting classes and coach stuff, which is kind of cool. So take a look at the calendar for the stuff, sign up for that. But today I'm going to talk about getting started in voiceover with the home studio equipment. This is a question that a lot of people have because they want to work from home. So luckily, you have a computer, you're here, you're viewing this talk, so the big part of it has been paid for. So you generally need to get some gear. So the talk is going to be about some basic stuff to get up and going. So what we're going to cover is a general introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about gear and software. We'll go through some process, and then I'm going to do a small demonstration. I'm going to use a program called Twisted Wave that we like a lot, that we start people off with in both the New York and the Los Angeles voiceover labs. And while we do use Twisted Wave in this talk, we also do classes with Audacity and also Pro Tools as well. So there's a lot of other programs out there. And then lastly, we'll go through some further thoughts. So to start off, the general introduction, or the why. So voiceover is a creative art and can be created and performed from a home studio, which is great. So during this time, it's been easier actually to move to your house to do this, because a lot of voiceover artists who've been working in the industry already were at home. But if you were an actor and you were on camera and you were trying to transition into working from home, voiceover can work for you there. Home studios for voiceover aren't very difficult to build. You can obviously go nuts and build something like Robert's picture, which is fantastic, Robert. Studio looks great. But it's often a choice of location, gear considerations, and a connections to equipment. And we're going to kind of cover a little bit of that in the talk today. So gear and software that doesn't need to break the bank. Overall, the cost for some of this stuff is fairly low. And then there's an industry knowledge base that's pretty large and available. Obviously, social media is in on that, but I'd like to point you to the voiceover labs, both in Los Angeles and New York, for educational resources and knowledge. And taking some of the classes will help you get set up. Voiceover is a term used to describe a large field of specialties and practices, but there are many avenues and creative endeavors there as well. So we're going to cover a little bit of that. So let's first talk about the gear, so the stuff that you're going to need. So in general, you're looking for a computer, a laptop, or a desktop. It can be Mac or PC, it doesn't really matter. Age doesn't play a huge factor into the voiceover world, whereas it does in the video editing world, but generally a computer under 7 years old is pretty good. The march of technology keeps going. There's software updates. Anyone who's sort of moved to Catalina on the Mac recently knows of some of the pain points of that. Also, as a computer ages, the fans begin to kick in. And while you're working on web browsing and word processing, it doesn't really matter as much. But in the audio world, it actually does matter a lot. You want to keep the fan noise out of your recording. And most of us are using the program and the computer for scripting. And so it tends to be pretty close to the microphone. So you're going to want to make sure that you either can divorce the computer from the recording situation if you have the space to do that, or you sort of keep up with the unit itself and make sure that it's not too old. If you have a computer that's about 4 years or younger, you should be pretty good. Tablets also should be considered when mobile recording is the primary concern. I am a bigger fan of home studio recording in a set up space. I think the acting ability and the system is a little bit better than going mobile, but I know a lot of you have questions about being out and about through the city and needing to record auditions kind of wherever you go. So iPads and phones can be considered for that stuff, but generally the detractor in sound is sort of the environments you record in. And at home, at least, it's cordoned off and protected, whereas in a car or out on the street, you have, you know, birds and traffic and stuff. But it can be done. And then for some of you who have older computers, want to bring a little life back into them, we often talk about this in our classes. We've sort of moved over the last few years from spinning disks in our computers to solid state drives, and the hookup of those drives isn't too technical. There's resources online. The reason that I mention this is because they can stop fan noises from coming on more rapidly, and also they're a lot quicker, and so you can have a device that's a little older and breathe some life back into it. You're going to need to get a microphone, and you get to make a choice here. You get to choose between an analog system, which also comes with the added cost of having to buy an audio interface. This is how we mostly record in studios for both music, voiceover, and post. An analog microphone, which I'm going to show you a little bit in the demonstration, is a unit that gets hooked up into an audio interface or a sound card, and then that unit translates the analog signal, the sound pressure level, into binary code for your computer. But it also gives you some hardware to actually touch and move. So you have gain input controls, which are nice to be able to move quickly, headphone controls. And then one of the benefits of having an audio interface is generally the sound is slightly better, but also the return trip of the sound from your microphone to your headphones, which can be delayed sometimes in digital systems, doesn't have that effect with audio interfaces. So there's sort of a direct monitor feature that's usually built into those. Cost should be consideration, though. If you're just starting out, we find that a lot of people who are new are obviously looking not to break the bank, and so they're trying to choose the best solution that's going to give them the best sound for not a lot of money. Totally understand that conversation. So if you're in that world, we usually talk to people about USB microphones or digital microphones. These are a lot simpler to use, and in a good space, they sound fantastic. There are a lot of models on the market that you can choose from. Generally, they range anywhere from about $100 to about $250, but most of them are somewhere right around in the 160, 170 range. And they're very easy to use. Just hook them up with a USB cable, plug them into your computer, and you're good to go. These are the two cable types. I wanted to show this because while some of you are getting started in USB, it's important to just know what cables look like. So if you're going to a store to purchase things, you have an idea. So the top cable up above is an XLR cable. That's used in every microphone system that's an analog system. So we connect one of those sides to an analog microphone and the other side to a preamplifier or to a sound card, which includes a preamplifier. And that's how you connect the microphone to that unit. And then lower, of course, is a USB cable, and that's used in the digital microphones, USB microphones. This is an audio interface. Sometimes we call it a sound card. This is used in the analog mic systems, as I was talking about. This is used to translate the analog signal into a digital one for your computer. So in essence, this sits between your microphone and your laptop or desktop. So you're going to plug the microphone into the front face of this unit, and then with the XLR cable that I just showed you, and then out of this comes a USB cable that gets plugged into the side of a laptop or desktop. So it's just an extra piece of kit. Audio interfaces generally, just cost-wise, run anywhere from about $100 to a couple $100. Mostly, which is good for you guys, in the voiceover world, you're not looking for a lot of extra inputs to these units. You don't usually record with multiple microphones. And so you can usually pay less, which is great, and have just a single mic input. So these convert analog signal to digital. There's generally a better sound profile and conversion with these units because they're doing a specific task. They're not trying to be a microphone and also a conversion from analog to digital. Also, hardware offers the ability to modify the signal quickly. Most of you who are doing commercial reads will be fairly consistent in your volume level, but those of you who are doing animation or video game even might need to be changing the input gain of your volume because the microphone can't match the level of volume that you're putting out for the different lines that you're going to read. So it is nice to be able to change that quickly. Monitoring, like I'd mentioned before, is also real time. This is one of the nice features of an audio interface. And then the monitor quality is generally better out of these units than it is out of a digital microphone or even out of your laptop. So mostly the units that get put together, the laptops that we use or the desktops, don't come with really good audio systems. It's not really a priority for computer manufacturers. And so you can kind of hear sometimes some noise in the headphones. And that's rid when you buy an audio interface or a decent USB microphone with a sound card built in. You also want to get a pop filter. This is the black ring here. It's strapped with like a kind of a lady's hosiery material across it, and it gets strapped to a mic stand. This will help stop the plosives, as we call them, the P's and the B's in language that hits the microphone capsule and creates kind of a big bass hit in the recording. We also, it's kind of gross, but most of us spit when we speak as well, and we want to keep that off of the capsule so that the microphone remains pristine for a long time. These are usually pretty cheap. They're anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks, and they affix directly to the mic stand, which is nice. So you want to put this directly between you and the microphone, and a good indication of distance between the microphone and your mouth. It's usually anywhere from about 6 to 8 or 9 inches is the hang loose sign. If you know that from Hawaii, push out of your pinky and your thumb. If you put the thumb at your mouth and you put the pinky at the microphone, not the pop filter, that's a good indication of distance. The pop filter should go somewhere in between that. And then you want to get a microphone stand if you can. Some of you will sit, some of you will stand, some of you will want to change during the recording process. These are very easy to use. They're often inexpensive, and they give you the flexibility. And they also generally isolate the microphone from the space. So from your desk, if you're sitting in a desk, or from some other units. Sometimes if you have rumble and wood floors, you might want to actually put a stand on some blankets or pillows to isolate it a little further. They're used in conjunction with a pop filter. So the pop filter that we just talked about would affix right to the mic stand itself. Generally, they're fairly cheap. And they come in a couple varieties. So the one that we're looking at here is a tripod stand that comes, that stands on a floor and raises up for you to stand. But some of you will want to work at a desk. They have desk mic stands that are just a shorter version of the one in the picture, which is nice, that you can put directly on the desk. Also boom stands, which are big, would use these a lot in ADR for film, where we have a larger room and we have to hang a mic at a distance. And then there's also drum mic stands, which are small. I didn't mention in here, but they're often used as well as broadcast arms, which are the sort of scissor arms that they'll use in radio stations. Those can be really helpful too in a small booth and also a desk if you need to pull something close to you to read and then push it away and use your computer. And all of them, except the boom stand, generally range under 50 bucks. You're also going to want to get headphones. And so there are a lot of choices for headphones out there. Of course, most of us who have phones have earbuds that come with those units. And then some of you will have some noise canceling headphones or some consumer brands that you really like because they sound great. We often tell people to stay away from a lot of those in the audio world because we're looking for reference or flat audio to come back from the microphone as pristine as it was recorded so that we can make adjustments to the audio signal based on what we're hearing. And so in the terms of earbuds, often the movement in your ear changes the frequency response of those greatly, even by millimeters. So if you're just doing some basic editing, it should be okay. But if you're referencing your audio to make sure that it sounds as good as you want it to, you really do need to hear all the artifacts in the recording. Noise canceling obviously is bad because we need to hear noise. And then a lot of consumer headphones enable sort of a loudness process, which increases generally the bass and the treble to make it sound a little sweeter. And we don't want your headphones to sort of lie to you about the signal that's coming from your microphone. So audio specific headphones that are used in the industry are some of the flattest frequency response headphones that you can get, and will give you the truth from what comes off of your microphone. This is a picture of a nice pair. Well, we don't endorse a specific brand. There are many brands out there, but you're looking for headphones from Sony, from Bayer Dynamic, AKG, Sennheiser, Audio-Technica. They all make great headphones. Generally, headphones range between $80 and about $140. $100 is kind of the sweet spot for most of them. And you're looking for, if you can try one on at some point, you're looking for one that is not fatiguing, because you'll often wear it for a duration of time. And if you're in the audiobook world, you're probably going to be wearing it for at least 2 to 4 hours. So you want something that won't clamp down on your head and give you a headache and feel comfortable. You're generally looking for circumaural as well, which is an over the ear. So it scoops around the ear and sits against your head. You're not looking for on-ear headphones. And you're generally looking for closed back as well, meaning as in this picture, there's no screen for the speaker to leak out into the world, mostly because the places that we record for home audio have noise in them, and you need to hear that coming from the microphone and not from the outside world. So closed back circumaural headphone is a good choice. So move on to software. We call the program that we use to record audio a DAW, or a digital audio workstation. So sometimes you'll call it a DAW, or hear it be called DAW. And we'll talk a little bit about plugins as well. So these are a couple packages that you can purchase or get for free to record. Pro Tools overwhelmingly is used to record music and post, and it works on Mac and PC. Twisted Wave, I'm actually going to show you in a little bit on my computer. It's Mac only, unfortunately, but we teach it at the VoiceOver Labs because it's very easy to use, and we wanted to give people an opportunity to stay away from the hardcore tech and really focus on being an actor. And that program does a good job of allowing you to do that. Eric mentioned that we're having an Audacity class coming up, which is great. We teach that as well, and that's on Mac and PC, and that's free. That's one of the packages that's free that you can download. A lot of people will start with that package because it works really well. And then there are a bunch of other ones, Reaper, Logic, SoundForge, Audition, and Sound Studio. These are all other packages. They all sound the same. Binary code sounds like binary code. It's all, you know, the same. It's all based on ergonomics and functionality and industry usage. Just kind of where all the price comes in. And they range anywhere from like $100 or free to $100 to a couple $100 in the case of Pro Tools. Plugins are extra packages that you can install into all of these programs that allow you to add functionality to do things like noise reduction or equalization, to change the bass or the treble of your audio, to compress it to make it sound more even, and then to limit it to make sure that some of your audio peaks don't go over a certain point. So some of the packages that you will download, the DAWs that you will download, come with effects or plugins. They're kind of synonymous in term. And you can use those. And then you can also go out and find free or purchase extra plugins to use in your program to do things. We cover this a lot in our advanced courses. So we have a couple software classes at the lab. We do a Twisted Wave course, an Audacity course, and a Pro Tools course. And we break them into a 101 and a 102 level. And the 101 is generally getting in, learning the interface, recording, doing some editing, and export options. And then the 102 is where we really start to cover workflow enhancements. We start to talk about plugins, a little bit about equalization. Certainly noise reduction comes up. The home studio for most of us living in a city can be kind of loud. And you generally want to reduce that noise floor or the sound of your home in the microphone as much as you can. The best place to do that, of course, is to start with the acoustic space. So blankets and duvets and closets and places that you can sort of go in to stop the sound from outside. Closing windows, of course, helps. But sometimes even doing that, the sound of the studio is still rather loud. And so sometimes you'll turn to software to help you do that. And so noise reduction software would help you lower the noise floor of your recordings in post after you've recorded. Okay, so let's talk about the process. So generally when you're working with programs to record, there's an order of operations that you should follow. And this is pretty important because a lot of you have laptops, and a lot of you who have laptops have microphones built into the lid of your laptop. And that microphone obviously is used to pick up sound for Skype and FaceTime and Zoom and whatever. And the order at which you plug the devices in and how you explicitly sort of set your devices in the program might mean the difference between you using your nice microphone that you've purchased or the lid of your laptop. Levels look like levels when you're watching a meter bounce, and unfortunately you might, at the end of the nice take that you've just done, realize you were using the lid of your laptop. So we want to make sure that you sort of focus on this order of operations. So first is obviously turn on the computer. Then you're going to want to connect your gear. So this could be the USB microphone that you're using to record. So you'll plug it in. Most USB microphones have some type of light or indicator on them that they're working. Or if you have an analog microphone, you need to plug the audio interface with its USB or Thunderbolt cable into your laptop or desktop. Usually also lights will indicate on that device saying that it's on, and then you can plug the microphone into that. Once you have connected the gear, then it's time to open the digital audio workstation. So in this case, it would be Pro Tools or Twisted Wave or Audacity. You would open this up. When you open up software in your computer, it will go out into the operating system and ask what's available for it to use. And because you have already plugged the gear into your computer, it knows that it exists in your system. And then the inputs and outputs of that software then will show up where they're supposed to. Lastly, after you choose to open the software, you need to go into the audio settings of your program, and they differ per program. Some of them are very easy to use. They're right on the interface in the front window. Some of them you have to go into a preferences menu. But at that point, you need to explicitly choose the hardware that you would like to use. So your computer doesn't make assumptions about you and about what you want to do, and sometimes it's incorrect in choosing the wrong microphone. And so you need to be explicit with it and say, I would like to use this USB microphone or this audio interface if that's the way you're going to go. So following this is pretty important. And then when you go to create a track, a good old tested way of checking it is to scratch the grill of the microphone lightly with your fingernail or to tap it just to make sure that that's the unit that you're using and not the laptop lid. When you're going into recording, there's some basic steps that you should follow. First, you need to practice the script. That's important. You're all actors, so you know that. Generally record as many takes as you need. Don't stop to edit and focus on the acting. We find that as people get used to the programs that they use to record and edit, they get really excited about editing a lot and about sort of fixing things. It can be fun. But you're here as actors first and sort of technicians second. And I would caution you to really focus on the acting and less on the technology. Recording in your computer for audio is sort of essentially free. Most of us have large hard drives and you're unlikely to record past the size of your hard drive on your computer. So it's sort of prudent for you to record as many takes as you need until you feel like you really nailed it, and then stop and go to the computer and sit down and really then focus on the acting. You can edit to one take by deleting everything that you don't want, or you can comp. Comping is the process of copying and pasting things together to make a take, sort of a Frankenstein take out of a bunch of different things. Comping is normal in the industry, but only to a certain level. If you feel like you're really cutting a lot of places out of other takes and building something new, you really need to focus again on the acting and performing, because when you do get into a booth at some point to do a job, you really get a couple runs at it. They're not going to comp the whole thing together to build something. And so you're going to need to nail it in a few takes, and you kind of want to practice that at home. When you're done for an audition, we always normalize. This is a global process that increases the volume of your overall audio to a specific level. Many of you will record at different levels, obviously, because you have different gear at your house. But the person who listens to your take at the end really wants to listen to a consistent take volume level between actors. And so it's very easy. Every program that you use to record comes with a normalize button. You simply highlight all the audio, hit normalize, and raise it up, and then save the file. You want to always save in a desired format. So if you're saving an audition, that's always the MP3 format. And if you're saving a file to keep around because you really love it and you want to go back and edit later, you'll be saving in the WAV format. WAV files can be edited many times without any loss in quality, whereas the crush to an MP3, the creation of an MP3 file, is sort of a one-way trip. You shrink the file down in size so that you can send it through email or put it on a website, and you've essentially thrown out a large percentage of the data in that file to make it small. The process is psychoacoustic, so hopefully we don't hear a loss in quality. But you can never come back from an MP3. You can always change the extension through transcoding, but you never gain back that quality. So if you feel like at some point you want to keep that file around and do something with it later, you might want to save it as a WAV and also as an MP3. And then lastly, we send it, and almost always in this case, it's email. If you're sending large files to someone to work on afterwards, then you can use, Hightail or WeTransfer or FTP or something like that. So let me go through a quick demonstration. So I'm going to pull off the screen share here, and I'm going to go to my camera, which I wonder if I can make big. Is there a way for me to make myself big? I'm looking at Zoom, so maybe you've already focused me on the YouTube stream. So I have some gear here, and it's just generally some gear that we use in the lab. So I am talking to you today through a USB microphone because it's very easy to hook up to a laptop. This happens to be a Rode model that we like a lot. Has a really great sound. As I get closer to it, my voice sounds amazing, right? We also have an analog system here we use in our lab, a Focusrite audio interface. There was a picture of that. And I only bring this up because I just wanted to show you the connections to the software and the gear. We don't specifically use these all the time. They work well, but we have other units that we use in the space as well. So we'll first start with the audio interface. So if we're going to go the analog route, we have to get a audio interface, which is this unit. It's about 130 bucks or so. Has multiple inputs on the front. So a microphone cable would go here, and if you had a second microphone here, and then there's a gain dial, which is where we turn the volume of the microphone up or down in the front. I happen to have an XLR cable here as well. This is a standard analog microphone cable. Here is the tip that would go into the audio interface. So I would plug that directly in to this unit here. And then one of the nice things about some of these audio interfaces is actually the trim level around the input gain lights up with the 3-color LED to tell you the input signal strength, which is nice. Over on your right side, or my right side, is the volume dial for the monitor. So if you hooked up speakers or headphones, you could change it there as well. So this gets plugged in with USB. That's on the back side. That goes directly into your computer. So that's the analog world. And then connecting an analog microphone, just so you can kind of see it. So I happen to have an analog microphone here. And you would connect the bottom of the microphone cable as such, snapped in. Almost all microphones that you're likely to use in the voiceover world need phantom power to operate. So I just want to show you that as well. I'm going to unhook the cable here. So there is a button on all audio interfaces, and on this one, it happens to be near the top called 48V or phantom power. I would click that, it would go red, and it would activate with power the input gain of the microphone, input 1 and 2. And it would activate the capsule of the microphone so that I could start recording. Without this, you would not hear any signal. And it's actually safe for most microphones these days to just leave this on for the entirety of your usage of this unit. In the USB world, most all of you have seen a USB cable, so I'm just going to show you one quickly. It's a standard USB cable. This gets plugged into the microphone and gets plugged into your laptop or desktop. Most USB microphones these days come with a headphone port, and just to show you what that looks like, there is a jack on the side of the microphone, and this allows me to hear directly from the microphone itself, sidestepping the latency or the delay that you might have in the round trip between the microphone and your headphones. Some microphones give you gain adjustment on the side or the front. It's about 50-50 with USB microphones. Some of these also have a mix knob between the computer and the microphone. We kind of cover that a little bit in our classes. And then there's a trim level for the headphone output to give you more or less gain in your headphones, which is usually just set to taste, whatever you like. So I'm going to go back into screen share mode, and I'm going to show you Twisted Wave just to show you how we hook this stuff up. Let me just minimize this talk here. So I'm on a Mac. This is my desktop here. I'm going to go down to, let me just, move Zoom real quick. There we go. I'm going to go down, and Twisted Wave is in my dock. I'm going to click on that and open up the program. I will go up to File, and I will go to New. And in the voiceover world, because you're a single person working on a single microphone, we always record in mono. We don't record in stereo because it's impossible with a single microphone. You're just duplicating data to the right channel, so your file size goes up by 2 for no reason. And a mono file played back on most computer systems and phones will actually port the signal to the left and to the right speaker, so the person will hear it in both earphones. And then you have a choice in your recording settings for your auditions or your takes. I would encourage you to match the spec sheet that comes to you from your agent or from some company that you're working with. The 2 parameters that we often choose when we're recording audio is the bit depth which is the word length of the recorded file, and the sample rate, or how many times we take snapshots or pictures of the audio per second. And you can see that this number is fairly large. So 44,100 hertz is samples per second. 16-bit and 44,100 is the CD sample, and it's been that way for the last 30 years for all countries, creating compact discs. It's also a pretty standard rate for auditions. And also the stipulated rate for ACX and Audible for audiobooks as well. And I think that might just be a holdover from the CD world. Film works a little bit higher. We work in 24-bit and generally 48,000 hertz. But I mostly encourage people when they're starting out with auditions just to work in 16-bit and 44,100 hertz. No one's really going to check the file. This is an ephemeral piece of audio that's going to go out and get listened to, and there's no reason to really over-record in depth or file size for no reason. So once these settings are put together, I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to open up, and the program is incredibly easy to use. This is Twisted Wave on a Mac. And the way that this works is we record in the large window here. We have a nice meter over on the right that gives us an indication of our level, which is great. They've color-coded this from a green area to a yellow area to a red area. These were created by the manufacturer of the program. In general, it's allowable for you to record in all of these color zones, just not to go over 0 at the top. At that point, you've overmodulated and possibly distorted your audio, so you want to make sure to change the gain. Again, that would be the knob on the audio interface or on the USB microphone to taste with the type of recording that you're going to do today. Up on the top, we have a horizontal bar, which is the overview window, which shows us where we are in the entirety of the recording. That's really helpful. We might be zoomed in below looking at some audio, fixing a couple things, but might need to see where we are in that space up above. And then all of your features that you're going to use are up on the top toolbar area. So we have some transport keys on the left, so back, play, start, forward. We have a loop feature that we can turn on if we'd like to. Zooming controls, which we use often in audio, and also undo and redo as well. Sometimes you cut something and you want to try it and you want to undo it because it wasn't as good as you thought. So those are there to help you out. This program offers a vertical zoom, which is really nice. It allows you to make the waveforms taller so you can investigate some of the quieter areas if you need to be fixing room tone issues. And then we talked a little bit about normalize. Here's that button. It's very simple. And then over on the right, we have a cursor selection and also a let me just see if I can show you here, a selection length as well. The selection length is very handy. It allows you to highlight some audio in the main window and find out how long that audio is. And in the world of voiceover, we're really concerned a lot about time. We need to make sure that we're in a 15 or a 30, 45 or a 60-second spot. And it's a good way to find out how long stuff is. So we talked about the order of operations a little bit ago. So I showed you some of the hardware. So my computer is obviously on, we're zooming. I have plugged the gear in and there are lights activated on both the USB interface and also the analog microphone. So now I've opened up my program. The program understands that things are plugged into my computer because I followed that order of operations. And now I need to explicitly set the audio for this program. And the way to do that is to go up to the audio menu and to go down to input device. And this is very specific for this program. Audacity is a lot like this. It's actually in the interface. But here you can see that I have a couple input devices. Today I'm talking to you with the Rode microphone, so I'm going to choose that. And then I also would like the sound to come out of that Rode device. So I can choose the Rode device here and it would come out because I'm plugged into the side of the unit itself. And that's always advisable. So if you have headphones and you're using them for a recording session, if it's in an analog world, you should be plugged into the audio interface itself. So the input would be audio interface, in this case, Scarlett, and the output device would be Scarlett as well. That's for the analog world. For the USB world, I plugged my headphones into the side of the USB microphone. The input device is the USB microphone and the output device would be the USB microphone as well. I'm actually going to choose Zoom audio device because I'm going to send my audio to you, which I think you can hear. So I'm going to choose the output there. And I'll just record a little bit so you can hear something. So I'm going to go up to the record button. At Panera, I'm a little loud for my recording here, so I'm going to stop. I haven't set my levels correctly. With the USB microphone that I'm using, I'm not able to change the input volume on the unit itself. So what I'm going to do is actually go into my system preferences. So I'm going to go up to the Apple on my computer, system preferences. I'm going to go into sound. I'm going to choose input and Rode. I'm forced into the system preferences menu because there isn't an input gain for this microphone on the unit itself. So I'm going to turn this down. This slider is an indication of volume adjustment. I actually like to record in Twisted Wave and flip back over to the input to change it because the meter in Twisted Wave is more accurate. I don't know what these are, so I'm going to change it with my volume. I'm looking to hit an average of about -12, which is a good level for most commercial voiceover. At Panera, we decided, coming down. At Panera, we decided, there we go, looks good. I'm going to flip back over to the program. I'm going to highlight all of the audio and hit delete, and now I'm going to record a spot. At Panera, we decided a long time ago to avoid the easy road and switch to antibiotic-free chicken. That decision set a lot of things in motion. So now it's not just chicken raised this way. It's more ingredients you can trust, which has taught us a lesson. Sometimes the harder road is the only one worth being on. Panera Bread, live consciously, eat deliciously. Panera Bread, live consciously, eat deliciously. So this is a spot from a number of years ago. I happen to remember it because I use it a lot. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the take. You can see that I've recorded a duration of about 30 seconds here. I did make some mistakes, so we're going to edit those really briefly. So I'm going to click switch to antibiotic-free chicken and switch to antibiotic. Okay, so we have an and switch. So I'm going to zoom in to find that. And switch. Okay. From the and switch to the and switch, this would be the wrong piece of the recording, and the corrected one, I'm just going to hit the delete key. A hallmark of this type of program is everything on the right-hand side will collapse to the left, decreasing the space. After I hit the delete key, which I just did. Easy road and switch to antibiotic-free chicken. That decision set a lot of things in motion. So now it's not just chicken raised this way. So I mistaked on or screwed up a little bit on the chicken here, so I'm going to do the same thing here. So now it's not just chicken so now it's not just chicken, and I'm going to hit the delete key and review. In motion. So now it's not just chicken raised this way, it's more ingredients you can trust, which has taught us a lesson. Sometimes the harder road is the only one worth being on. Panera Bread, live consciously, eat deliciously. Panera Bread. Again, same thing. I like my second tag here. So I'm going to highlight from the first tag all the way through to the beginning of the second tag, and I'm going to hit the delete key. And then at the very end, there's just some extra recording I'm going to delete as well. I'm going to go back to the beginning. One way to do that is to scroll, but I can also grab the area in the overview up above and actually move it to the left-hand side, which is nice. We generally start our takes right on time. So I'm going to hit delete to clear that, and I'm going to zoom out. And then before I save this, because this is an audition, I want to normalize this file. So I'm going to double click the audio and go up to normalize. What's happening in this case is the computer is going through my audio and it's finding the loudest peak, the loudest modulated point, and it's giving it a number. I'm not sure what that number is. The computer knows. And it says, okay, Mike, where would you like me to move that number to? I generally normalize to -1. Some people normalize to -3. That's a taste thing. This slider up here, the horizontal slider, is the same as the one on the right. -1 is 1 decibel below 0. We use peak value. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to move that loudest point up to -1 and everything else up by the same amount. Normalization is the same process as turning the volume up in your car, just everything gets louder. So now everything is louder. The amplitude of the waveforms is taller, indicating that it's louder. I want to save the file, so I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save this to my desktop. I'm going to call this Panera. And I can choose a file format here. We have many. We go between WAV, audio for the high resolution, and MP3 for auditions. You can also choose settings here to choose a bit rate. We go more into this in the classes, so I'd encourage you to take those, and I just hit save. Goes through and saves the file, puts it on my desktop. I can then quit Twisted Wave. Here's that file, and I would email it off to the person that I want to send it to. So that's a sort of a brief introduction to Twisted Wave. And then last, some further thoughts about the education and remote recording. For education, the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab offers a state-of-the-art facility. We kind of talked about that. It is true. We have an amazing mic locker, and the gear that we use is the same gear you'd find in big studios, which is great. So you get experience with that. And it's led by professionals who have years of experience working with that. So there's a wealth of knowledge there to learn from. There's a variety of programs. There's industry-led instruction from people who are out in the industry, which is great. And we also do one-on-one consultations, which is nice to help you with gear setup and also process. And we're education first. We focus on education over everything. Robert's going to go into recording remotely after me. It's great that he's part of this talk because he can speak a lot more to Source Connect. But there are a few solutions. These days, obviously, all of us are at home. And the voiceover world, while it's been at home, now the question is from mostly agents is, it used to be, can you record from home? Do you have a home studio? And now it's, do you have a home studio and can you also record remotely through a solution like Source Connect or IPTTL? And most people who are coming online now have to sort of answer yes to both of those. Luckily, it's not super challenging. Both packages, Source Connect and IPTTL, offer a pretty easy to use interface to get audio to someone else. I have used both of these. I use Source Connect often. They often come in a rental and a purchase option, so you can own the software, you can rent if you need it, which is kind of nice. And some of them are online as well, in the case of Source Connect now. And then lastly, your ability to shine. Believe in yourself, that's important. I know this is some basic stuff, but I talk to a lot of actors, or have talked to a lot of actors over the years. And believing in yourself and sticking with the journey is important. Seek out help from professionals. I think that's key. We've put the lab together to give you access to people who've been working in the industry for a long time. And it's good that you get information from people who are actually performing every day or doing the digital stuff, the tech stuff. So you get the right answers to the questions you have. And also understanding that the journey itself is the goal. You becoming a better actor in the voiceover world is the journey. And even though getting to the end with a demo or an agent is good, the practice getting to that point is what makes you great. Educate yourself as much as you can. There's a lot of online resources, social media and books that are out there. Ask a lot of questions and then learn to let go sometimes. I see this in editing all the time. People are really specific about things, and sometimes it's better to just let go and let the acting ride. Lastly, I'm going to post this up for you guys. This is contact information for the space and how you can reach the two people you might need to reach. Eric?
There it is. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. So as Mike states, this information is readily available to you also at our website, SAGAFTRA.Foundation. Feel free to get started if you want to jump into some classes. We have things happening pretty much every day of the week. So there's always something that you can get involved with. And if you do, again, have questions, feel free to send an email, and we will be more than happy to help you out with that. All right. Thank you. Keith?
Wow, that was terrific. Thank you so much, you guys. What a great resource for this community. That pretty much covers how you get audio into and out of your computer and off to an agent or a client who might be performing auditions. And now we're going to move to the next step, which is booking the job. And if you're going to book the job and you need to record and audio from home, but not just record audio from home, but get it to a studio where they can record your audio too, you're going to need a program that's designed to do that. And that used to be rarefied air for the voiceover performer. If you didn't have an ISDN box, which used your telephone lines, the ones that are made out of cables that are put in the ground, you couldn't do it. And sometimes that was not in your neighborhood even, so it wasn't even an option for you. Now with the advent of computer technology, and now that computers have gotten faster, a lot of that stuff is being done online. So we're very fortunate to have Robert Marshall here from Source Elements, which has the programs Source Connect, Source Connect Now, Source Connect Pro, Source Connect Standard, all the different Source Connects, which is one option among many that studios are using. And I invite you also to kind of dig into that and find out. We're not endorsing one company over another here today, but we are lucky to have Rob Marshall. So Rob, I would love you to run us through how Source Connect works, and so that when we as actors book a job and we have to use your product or IPDTL or any of the other products that are out there that do the same sort of functionality, that we can do that with ease and just focus on our abilities as performers to deliver the best performance possible. Rob?
Hello, and thank you for having us over. So yeah, I guess we'll just start with the beginning of Source Connect. You know, making the assumption you've got your mic going into your studio. The most important thing is your room and just dealing with it acoustically. I think one of the things I always explain to people is that is the first thing in sounding good, and the finer points are USB mic versus XLR mic, but really you have to take care of your space. The other thing I always emphasize is don't worry about doing too much. As an audio engineer, we always want to have less. So you don't need to gate, you don't even need to noise reduce really, because maybe that's good for the audition, but once you're on and you're recording, you don't want to sort of corner the engineer into some decisions that you've made when they can probably do all that stuff themselves, and they would rather have the freedom to process things that haven't been processed already. To start with, we make Source Connect. Now is the first version. It's a free service we provide. So you'll see a lot of variants of different communication systems that are provided over the Chrome web browser, or a mini Chrome, like a little app that you launch, which is still really just Chrome. These systems all use the Opus codec, and they're using Chrome as the backbone. They're essentially the same exact thing on all of them. They're just a different implementation, the skin, the GUI, the way it works in particular, but just like with the audio interfaces and things like that, or the programs that record audio, it's the same encoding, it's the same decoding, it's the same transport, which is Chrome. So I'll share my screen here, and I'll show you our Source Connect now will be the first one. Let's see, one participant. Do I just, at the bottom, I say share screen, and I say desktop.
That should do it.
I think you have my screen, right? Yes, you do. Okay, so first thing is Source Connect now. The reason why the Chrome variants are not as much liked for studios and whatnot is they basically are built on a system that was designed for general communications. They're really office collaboration and telephone systems that have been shoehorned into doing as best they can at doing high quality, but they still have a number of behaviors that are Skype-like. And so what I mean by that is over the internet, there are going to be errors. And when these systems encounter errors, the Chrome systems really don't employ error correction. They have error concealment. And you see that if you spend time on Skype or others, you'll eventually hear someone take a word and go along, and after that go really quick to catch back up. And that is the whole concealment. Just it's trying to preserve a conversation, but it's not really focusing on fidelity, which we'll get into in a moment with the upper versions of Source Connect being Source Connect Standard and Pro. Pro X can do up to 5.1 audio, but as mentioned, we only have one mouth, so we're working in a mono world. At Source Connect now, you log in. I'll just log into my account here. And the first thing you're presented with is let's start a connection. So you say that. Mono 128 is fine, even less can sound very good, but somewhere between 96 and 128 is a sweet spot, really. How many people Source Connect now is capable of conferencing? And this is your guest passkey, so you can change that every time, and that way you don't have your Coca-Cola clients hearing you do a Pepsi commercial or something like that. So once you have your connection set up, you simply click Connect Now and give it a second. And now you're essentially waiting for someone to join you. Over here, you have your input, or sorry, this is your setting for your quality. This is your input. Right now, mine is set to the main microphone input, but as shown before, you would see your audio input for your interface there. And this is your output. This is going to my headphones. At that point, you can send an invite to somebody simply by clicking this button. You put in their name and their email. You can include the passkey for them to type in, or you can give it to them secretly on the side. And then you, sorry, where'd it go? But if I filled it all out, we would have a send button, and there it is. So for example, me, there's my email for everyone. There it is. So once you send your invite, which is the same as this link up here as well, So the guest could open up, and they could either open that link or they can click on guest sign in. And then they would enter the name that you are. That's your username. That's your name, or your guest's name would enter their own name. Pass key, which I think, yep, that's correct. And then they can connect. And so at that point, it negotiates the connection. And give it a moment to establish the connection.
And I will also say, for the folks who are watching this at home, that frequently, if you're booked for a job, you'll be the person receiving the invitation from the studio. So from our end, it's frequently just clicking on that accept the invitation, enter the pass key, and then you're in the session. So we don't usually, because we're not studios, start from the invitation side.
Right, you're often responding to the invitation. So here's the connection establishing, and then you'll see both connected. I'll mute that so I don't hear myself. So this is your send right there, and this is what you're receiving from your client, and you can control the volume right there. And as simple as that, that is Source Connect now. You're now connected in as best quality as it can do, usually broadcast quality at least, but it does have that possibility for time stretching and changing the bit rate, which is known as variable bit rate, because it doesn't really correct errors, it more conceals them. So often on these systems, you'll definitely want to record a backup, and maybe even you'll be expected to deliver it, because the Chrome systems are a little bit more the sort of void between a phone patch and something really like ISDN. Even when you're, so for instance, we offer our own bridge, but even when you're bridging from Chrome to ISDN, the bridge essentially combines the worst attributes of each system that it's bridging together. So you'll get the time stretching artifacts that you might see over Chrome basically transmitted over ISDN. But yet you can essentially do bridges, and there's various bridging services, including our own. When you jump up into Source Connect, the next version is Source Connect Standard. So I'll close out Chrome here. Source Connect Standard is pretty much the default version that that the talent need. That's Pro X, sorry. It is very simple to use, essentially similar to Skype. So you have a username and a password to log in with. And right now on this particular computer, I don't have ports, so it's going to take a moment. We'll get into ports. My ports are actually currently over here with Source Connect Pro, so my standard version doesn't have the ports. But so you might see this port unmapped message, and we'll get into that in a second. The ports essentially determine your ability to receive audio, and there's a few tricks that Source Connect has for getting through firewalls. In Source Connect Standard, the main thing you want to look at once you've launched and logged in is the audio options menu. You're always going to use high quality. You're always going to use mono. 48 or 44.1, depending on the industry you're working with. Typically, you'll want to work at 48 and match what the post house is using, especially because they might be using a secondary system called auto restore and auto replace, which is another one of those features in Source Connect we'll get into that really kind of sets it above some of the other systems. Your buffer, you can leave it alone at low for the most part. And then here's your input and your output. So again, you'd pick your microphone, be it USB or from an audio interface, and then your output would be your headphones. One thing to go into with headphones, just as an aside, closed back headphones were mentioned, and these are extremely important when you get into remote connections, because you don't want the headphones leaking back out over to your microphone and causing an echo for your clients to hear themselves. So sometimes actually for that reason, if they isolate better, the in-ear buds that kind of seal into your ear can often be a good choice, because if they're comfortable and they isolate better, that can be preferred in a remote connection. But definitely a closed back pair of headphones. So once you're logged into Source Connect, the core of it is essentially just like Skype. You have a username that you can give to your clients. They would log in, and then at the time of the connection, they would also see you online because you're logged in as well. I'll go back over to my other system. Maybe I can pull up a connection that way. So here I am. So if I click this button to connect, me as the talent, I'm right now being both systems, me as the talent, I'm going to see a message saying I want to connect. And this is what that message looks like right here. so-and-so wants to connect, you accept the connection. Yes, we accept the connection, and then it establishes that connection. And so there you can see that my voice is being received over on the studio side. And really it's as simple as that with Source Connect. You're now once again connected, and the studio hears you, they're recording you directly. It's good practice to use a backup recorder. I should have mentioned that Source Connect now has a backup recorder built into it. But one of my favorite backup recorders, if you're looking for simplicity, is actually just good old QuickTime. It's only on a Macintosh. I can't stress how much life is easier with audio with a Macintosh computer. Often if you're using a Windows machine and you're just auditioning, it's one thing, but once you start connecting with multiple locations, you start to need to run multiple applications that deal with audio at the same time. And Windows simply 8 times out of 10 doesn't deal with multiple applications using the same audio interface at the same time. And I cannot stress how much easier life is with a Mac. Get that 7-year-old Macintosh and it's going to cost you less and run better than a new Windows machine. So where was I before I got, oh yeah, QuickTime. Great little backup recorder. You just launch it. You say, hey, give me a new audio file. And right here, pick your audio input. In my case, I got my microphone. Where's my built-in mic? It's going to be in this list right there. And then you just want to say maximum quality, which will give you an AIFF file, which is essentially the same as a WAV file. And life doesn't get easier than that backup recorder right there. You record. When you're done with your session, you hit stop. When you try to close it, it asks you to save it. You give it a name, you save it. And then you probably don't need it anyways because they recorded you directly. The next things going up the chain and how you kind of set up Source Connect is you can create situations where you can provide not just your live microphone, but also playback for your clients. So if they need to hear something that you just did, for some reason they didn't record it, there's some issue like that. The way to do playback is that Source Connect includes a plugin. So here's Reaper, which to kind of separate things, actually, I would interject that Twisted Wave and Audacity are not DAWs. They are audio recording and editing systems, but they deal very specifically with the files themselves, but they do not have a real-time mixer. And that is what you need to be able to deal with more fluidity connections that are coming in and out of your system. So something like Reaper, Pro Tools, even Audition, those are full up workstations, digital audio workstations, and they have a real-time mixer in them, and they're not just dealing with things on a file level for recording and editing. So here in Reaper, which is really amazing, bang for the buck, I don't think you can touch it on anything. It's extremely powerful and very affordable. Create a new track, you record arm it, there's my microphone. Hey, I want to get my track over to Source Connect. I'm just going to open up effects. I'm going to look for the Source Connect link plugin. There it is. You can make it a little bit smaller so it's not so ugly. And you can see I have link ID 1 right there. If I go back over to my Source Connect standard copy, and I change my input to go from, instead of my built-in microphone, now I have an option down here for link. I can switch my input to link. And so now, it should be, input, yep, so now my, oh, here we go. Okay. There we go. So now my microphone is feeding through Reaper and into Source Connect. And so that gives me the opportunity to be able to record myself. Blah, 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 blah. There's me recording. And if I hit stop, Reaper asks me to save the file. I will save it. If I go out of record, you notice my microphone is not feeding the plugin anymore. And therefore, my microphone is not feeding into Source Connect. But if I hit play in Reaper, I'll try to window this up so you can see it. Now my playback is going over to Source Connect. So I can provide playback directly from a workstation to the clients. The same trick can be used for phone patching with Source Nexus and other types of routing. Source Nexus gets into a lot of other setups where if you need to be connected to a studio in one place and have your clients connected in on Zoom or something else, Nexus can create those multiple conferences of multiple systems together. Typically, you shouldn't have to do that. The recording studio should be doing that, but what's happening a little bit more and more is that the talent is being assumed to be the audio engineer. And so maybe you're recording yourself and the studio, for whatever reason, isn't ready to patch all those other endpoints in. And we've seen a few instances where talent have had to create these conferences of not just themselves, but their clients as well in a phone patch sort of context. And it's going a little bit beyond, but it might come up depending on what level your clients are working at and what they're expecting of you. I personally think that that should be all in the domain of the recording side, and that's typically where it is happening. The next things that Source Connect can do for you, however, are it can lock the transport with the studio that you're connected with. So now you can do sync to picture records in perfect sync. So I'm going to create a new track here, and I'm just going to put another plugin in here called SE Rewire. Oops, again.
We should just jump in and say, Rob, that this is all super advanced stuff that you're
Sure,
getting.
yeah, like reading with picture
speaking,
lock gets into ADR and other things.
right? Which is something that you may need to learn if you're stepping into remote ADR sessions, which are happening these days. That work continues, but generally speaking, you'll be either receiving an invitation from the studio to join their call, which is very simple to do, or using Source Connect standard to jump in with the studio. So this is fascinating stuff, and I think you should continue on with it. But I don't want anybody who's watching from home to feel like they need to master this in order to get going in voiceover.
Yeah, of course. Like essentially, once Source Connect is launched and opened, it provides a very high quality connection that tends to hold on stronger than other sort of more consumer-based connections. And typically, that's it. They're recording you wild. You're recording a backup. I joke, but it's kind of true. You probably won't need the backup. Just just to kind of get out of it quickly, but this is a remote player that we make that allows the studio to give you a picture, and they can control the picture very easily. So you can just read along with picture, and they capture it in sync on their workstation. Typically, it's Pro Tools, and then in Source Connect, the what do you call it? The transport feature is down here on your side. So all you would have to do on your side is select receive, and you would then be set up to basically have your picture controlled by the other side. One thing to note, the reason why it's grayed out here is because we are sample rate converting. I'm on 44.1 on this system, and the connection I'm making is to another system that's at 48. And you notice Source Connect automatically sample rates converts, but when it does that, it removes certain features, and one of them is this ability to transport lock. The other one is actually the ability for Source Connect to manage all the recordings and essentially guarantee that they're perfect on the remote side. So if the studio is using Source Connect Pro, talent can be using Source Connect Standard. Source Connect includes specifically the auto restore feature. You need Source Connect Pro for auto replace, which we can get into. But what auto restore does is it tracks all the recordings that they're making of your performances. So take 1, take 2, take 3. Maybe take 3 has a glitch in it because the internet kind of had a problem, and Source Connect, even though it tries to literally fix everything in real time, if it can't, what Source Connect doesn't do is it doesn't fake it. So it's very binary. The audio that's received on the other side is either perfect or literally not there at all. And if it's not there, it's a dropout. And then the queue manager kicks in on the remote side. All the talent has to do is log into the queue manager. And then their system will track those recordings. If it finds a glitch, it will go back to your system, ask for the missing audio, put it back into their audio file so that maybe after you do take 4 and take 5, when they go back to play take 3, they had the glitch is fixed. And so this is something that really sets Source Connect completely apart from other systems. You can't do that with ISDN. You can't do that with anything that really doesn't treat audio in terms of fidelity and more just treats it as a means of communication. And so that essentially guarantees that what they receive on the remote side is perfect. And that, for many reasons, the fact that it plugs directly into their systems, has the cue restore and replace system, and whatnot, it really makes Source Connect the premier choice for really all of these remote post sessions. It comes from a legacy of where ISDN was that exclusive club. To quickly go into it, we can bridge you to ISDN if necessary. Our bridging service is, you can get to it from your Source Elements dashboard. So scoot over here and we'll log in.
And what this does is it makes what's happening on your computer translate to a box that is used to receiving telephone signals, right?
Exactly. So a bridge literally goes from one system to the other. And so the advantage of a bridge is that it's very flexible. You can be on your computer, they can be on their hardware from 1983, and you're still going to get connected. The bridge literally is, think of it as like hopping across lily pads to get there. From your dashboard, over here is your application section, and then over here is our ISDN bridge service. In the way we work, you have to log in again. So here it's saying—
This is a fix for a studio that insists on ISDN.
Exactly, right. So we run our bridge with a booked system. Sorry?
Right. So you can go to Source Elements and be received on their end through their ISDN technology.
ISDN hardware, exactly. The reason why we go with a booked system is that any bridge takes hardware. And so if everyone tries to use it all at the same time, it's like an airline overbooking, and then someone's going to end up without a seat. What we do instead is we say you can book it, you have it at that time, it's guaranteed to be yours. If you want to book it 5 minutes ahead, you'll either have it or you won't. And that's the same thing as everyone crashing in all at the same time and trying to use the system. Our bridge is very easy to use. This is what it looks like when you don't have a booking, but once you have a booking, this is essentially the screen that you see. It's a 1, 2, 3 setup. First question is, what are you using? Are you using Source Connect Now Chrome or using Source Connect Standard Pro? Then the next question is, what's happening? Are you dialing out on ISDN or are you receiving the call? Typically as the talent, you're going to be receiving the call. So you would have an inbound bridge booked. But if you did book outbound, you would have the ability to have outbound, and then you can put the numbers that you're calling here. Always lead with a 1. You always got to put 1 area code and then the 7 digits. If you need to, you can get right into the settings of the ISDN box. So here you can control literally every parameter. This is the guts of the ISDN box, what codec it uses, but the industry has pretty much settled on layer 2 mono 128 and layer 2 receive. Typically, you just leave these all alone. The next thing down here would be, if we actually had a bridge booked, would be the numbers that your clients would dial if it was a inbound bridge. So you'd give those numbers to your clients. With our booking system, when you book the bridge, you get the numbers right then and there. When you book it, even if you book it for 3 days or 3 years from now or 3 minutes from now. So you don't have to wait to figure out what your SPIDs are. Your SPID is another name for the ISDN number. But you can also subscribe to your own ISDN number if you'd like, so that every time you book a bridge, you get the same ISDN number, and therefore you can give that to your agent, post it on your website, and you know you're always found in the same place if you're doing that many bridges. So really quickly, once you're in the bridge, I won't go ahead and fire it up because it takes like 2 minutes for it to get it all fired up. You're essentially presented—
We want to get to plenty of Q&A.
Too much in the weeds, right?
Yeah.
But I'll just say a few other unique things about our bridge. It's probably widely known, but the ISDN systems are old, and a famous way of getting them to behave and work is to literally reboot the boxes. Our bridge, once you're in it, you can reboot the Source Connect at the bridge, not your Source Connect, but the Source Connect software at the bridge. You can reboot the ISDN hardware at the bridge. You can hang up. You basically have complete full control over the whole system, even though essentially what this web page does is it lets you reach through the internet and control quite literally one of these boxes here. This is the box that eventually won the ISDN. This became the most popular ISDN box. It's the most widely compatible. it's just, TELUS is a great company. They still service these things, even though you can buy a new one on eBay for probably $50 now. One last thing I'll say about ISDN is we do offer direct ISDN service. So if you're doing so many bridges that you are paying more than $200 a month, or maybe AT&T is killing you with your ISDN service and you're paying who knows what to AT&T, or Verizon has called you up and said that they're taking it away, or you're lucky enough and you're in CenturyLink or Frontier territory and they're leaving you alone. But if you need ISDN service for one of various reasons like that, we do make a service called vISDN right here. This is hardware ISDN delivered over an internet system. The way it works is we send you a box. You can see a picture of it down here at some point in this video with me and George, but we send you a box. You connect your ISDN box from 1983 into our box. You then connect one or even two internet connections into our box. And now your ISDN line is basically managed by us. We have it here in Chicago for you. And the last mile, instead of being a pair of copper wires from the pole off the street, is now coming down your internet connection. But it is, compared to a bridge, it is your old ISDN hardware dialed directly to the other studio's hardware. So you get rid of latency, you get rid of complexity and various other things. All that said, pretty much ISDN is going away anyways. So
it seems to be on the wane.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for getting into that. For those folks who are interested in that technology, because it was the industry standard for
it was.
generations.
But and the reality is, like, a computer sounds better, is easier, especially when you start using it more with Source Connect and having transport locking and the queue system. There's just way more you can do with a computer-based IP system than with a serial ISDN system.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for that. And I want to just say to everybody who's tuned in that what you're feeling right now, this overload feeling, is the beginning of a learning process. And that this venturing into taking this technology into your own hands and using it to work from home as a professional voiceover actor is a learning curve. It's going to take time for you to process all this information about setting things at -6 dB or -1 dB and normalization and EQ and sound floors, and then taking information. And I want to just give everybody who's on this call right now permission to feel overwhelmed. And that's part of the process. But don't let that feeling of being overwhelmed stop you from moving forward, because this is something that you can learn. It's fairly nuts and bolts. I am by no means an expert on this stuff, but I do have a studio, a broadcast quality studio in my home, and I know how to use it. And that has taken me from starting with an SM58 in a lampshade stuffed with a comforter, into a closet that was treated with U-Haul blankets, into now a fully functioning studio that I can connect to anywhere in the world. So just give yourself permission to move slowly through this. Give yourself permission to, it's a whole new world out there. And remember that we do really want to come back to focusing on you as performers, and programs like Source Connect and IPDTL and the plug-in USB mics are all great ways to get you into performing as easily as possible. So again, many, many, many thanks. Really thorough presentations from everybody at the lab, and from Robert too. I know Rebecca got at least 7 pages of questions, if not another 10 or 15,000 from our performers. We want to get to as many of those as we possibly can. So Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Keith. Thank you for moderating the panel, and thank you all for all the guests being here. And really, such a wide array of information, from the starting out at the beginning to the much more advanced. And Keith, again, thank you. What a great, you're going to stick around because I've got a bunch of questions for you. So first off, part of what has come in and what we're seeing, and you guys are flooding us with questions, so that's great. A lot of the questions come in, and obviously SAG-AFTRA doesn't endorse any products or services, but people are trying to understand what are some of the best microphones, some of the best soundproofing. We covered some of this in the presentation a little bit, but people really are trying to sort this out. They're also trying to sort it out in the moment where we're in the middle of a pandemic. So taking the moment in, and I really loved what you said, Keith, as we transitioned, not to be overwhelmed, all of that. So if you guys could give us just your opinions, and they're just your personal opinions, not your endorsements. If you have thoughts about that at different budget levels, because everybody's coming to this from a different space. Some people are maybe doing a little work in this area and want to be able to now do it from home. Some people are, had booming careers and are now figuring out how to do those things in the comfort of their apartment or home. So I know that mileage could vary. So if you could kind of tier it a little bit for us so they could be good for everybody, and give us your best thoughts. I'd like to just do a quick round from the panel to get everybody's take on those things. Why don't we start with you, Keith? You did such a great job of moderating. I need you to go ahead.
Well, like I said, I started with, I bought a Shure SM58, which you've all seen if you've been to a rock show, you've seen an SM58 that the vocalist uses. And that was for a live gig that I was doing, kind of a voice of God thing. So I bought it for myself to use, and I paid for it by doing this gig. As I went on, I had an engineer friend who said, are you booking with that SM58, that $100 mic? And I was like, well, no, I haven't really had a lot of bookings. He's like, you might consider investing a couple, $300-400 in a good large diaphragm condenser or LDC mic, which I did. And that paid off in more bookings. And that's the idea here, is that this money that you're spending is not making you poor. It's giving you an opportunity to make more money than you spend. That's how entrepreneurs work. And that's what we all are as actors. We are entrepreneurs. So look at these investments. And I think you saw from the perspective of what the Voice Lab guys talked about, is that for $300, $400, $500, you can start with a decent USB microphone. I like the Rode NT USB as well, although there are many at that $100 to $200 price point. And a good set of headphones. They don't have to be Beats. In fact, they shouldn't be Beats. They should be those AKG, the Sennheisers, the Sonys that give you a good flat response. About $100. So for $250, $300, you're starting to move in the direction of your career. And then as you move into picking up a preamp and a larger diaphragm mic, you certainly don't need a Neumann U87, which is a $3,000 or $4,000 mic at the starting point in your career. And even when you get to being an actor who works from home like I do, you don't need a $3,000 or $4,000 mic necessarily. You might want one, you might use one, but it's not necessary. So as you grow in your career, I think that you begin to take that money you make off your bookings and you reinvest a portion of that into upgrading your mic, upgrading your preamp, and treatment of your room. Something we haven't talked too much about. I worked for years with a good, I used the Rode NT2A microphone through an M box into my computer, and I stuck it in the closet in between my coats, which gives you which takes out all that reflective sound that you hear when you're in a cathedral. Say you get a lot of reflected sound. You want to deaden that. And I got some advice from an engineer friend of mine to go to U-Haul and pick up their blue packing blankets, and also the thicker ones that go behind it. So you put the thicker ones that are sort of messy and falling apart on the wall, and then you put those blue blankets over the top of that, and you want to do your ceilings. You want to get as much of that sound deadened as you can, but that's a really, really low cost way to treat a room. Now, it's not going to soundproof your room. That's a whole nother set of expenses and engineering, and it's going to make your eyes glaze over. But to get a room that sounds good, that has a a nice dead sound as opposed to a reflective, bouncy, echoey sound. There are cheap ways to do it. I also, for the ceiling, I just went to Target and bought a twin foam topper for a mattress that was wavy. And I just stapled that to my ceiling. You can use adhesive spray. You don't have to spend a lot of money on Oralex and all those fancy stuff. You can get a decently treated room, which will not be soundproof without spending a whole lot of money. So that's my journey from, like I said, a stage vocal microphone inside a lampshade stuffed with blankets to a professional home studio that I have today.
That's great, Keith. Does anybody else want to jump in? Eric, anybody? Rob?
I think, I would say that I think that one thing to think of is that as you're building your career, you're also building your studio. And so you don't need to spend a lot of money in some of the equipment, but you do want to sometimes not grab the most inexpensive piece, because you will end up buying 10 different microphones if not. And so you can get, instead of jumping in on the first $100 mic, maybe spend $250, get an XLR microphone. That's going to be an investment for the long term. When you buy a USB microphone, that's all it ever will be. And eventually you will not even be able to use it because they're going to change the USB plug on you. So I would say the better money goes towards getting an XLR mic with a decent audio interface. You can start that one off pretty inexpensively. Things like the Scarletts, the Rode AI1s, you know, also that Rode NT1 comes into play. I think my podcast we did a shootout with those things, and I think it was Rode NT1A or NT1, one of those, sounded ridiculously close to, amazingly, a Sennheiser 416, or as we're trying to change the name to the 416. So the 416 is pretty much, you know, like the industry standard microphone for voiceover, but you don't need that. You do need a good mic. I'd go for something in that $300 range. It'll probably last you a really long time. Get a decent audio interface, one that handles your headphones, so you can get a low latency monitor in your headphones, and that's going to be the core of what you need. It's going to last you a long time. After you do that, you know, you spend maybe $350 on a mic and a interface. Put the money and the effort into your room. That is the next most important thing. It's going to make all the difference. If you don't have a good sounding room, it doesn't matter what $3,000 Neumann you have or $2 USB mic you have. It'll sound like your room. So get that room treated for reflections, deaden it up. Throw a carpet in there, often overlooked, an easy way to get some sound to be sucked up. Clothes are fine. It doesn't matter how it looks. One thing I always say is that essentially what they use in the studios is called Owens Corning 703. And Oralex will try to charge a lot of money for this stuff because they're going to cover it in fabric. You can go get a raw pack of Owens Corning 703, I think for $100, get a glue gun, some fabric, some really porous fabric. So it keeps the yellow stuff from flying around. But really what you want is the sound to get caught up in the 703. So covering them in plastic would be a very bad idea. Some sort of porous fabric that looks good. Might not look great, glue gun that stuff, and single drywall screw right into your wall, and you're done. And you can actually get that stuff set up fairly affordably. And then and 703 really works extremely well. It's obviously what the studios use when they're lining their walls. Beyond that,
He's pointing up to where.
Yeah.
I thought you were illustrating. There you go.
Those are two on my walls, and I've got some above my head and over here, and then in the booth I've got a whole bunch. So
yeah,
basically how
one of the reasons why 703 is so easy to work with is because it's rigid. So if you go with Roxol, it's floppy stuff, and then you have to start building frames, and that's a whole nightmare. But 703, you can just like glue gun fabric over it, and it's just, who cares? Glue it on the wall. Or Oralex does make some spikes that you can screw on the wall, and then you can like impale the 703 on the spikes, and those things are worth buying from Oralex. After that, like I said, in the sort of tradition of building your studio and not buying things redundantly, I would highly recommend doing it on a Macintosh. And then really just getting to know your software and really taking a less is more approach. I mean, really what we're talking about is a microphone, an interface, a pair of headphones, and a Mac, and a good internet connection, and a bunch of junk on your walls. And then there you go.
Eric or Mike, did you want to jump in with anything there?
Real quick, as Robert alluded to, please avoid going on Amazon and buying a $50 microphone that was made in China. Not knocking China at all, but I'm just saying manufacturing principles are a little different. A $50 mic is not going to be the same as buying a $200 mic that is going to have better innards, if you will. Electronics are going to be better. It's going to reproduce sound a lot better. The tendency a lot of times we see is that people go through our orientation process and we talk about home studios, and the first thing they do is go out and buy a lot of budget products. I think that as you know, Keith and Rob has stated, this is an investment in your career. Microphones are going to last you for a long time. If you take care of a good mic that you spend a couple $100 on, that microphone is going to last you for 10, 15, 20 years. I have an AT4050. That's a $700 microphone. I've had that for 15 years. It works perfectly. It's fine. So if you make that investment, these are products and tools you're going to be using for a long period of time. And a lot of them will hold their value if you want to resell and move on to something different. So keep that in mind as well.
Mike, were you going to jump in?
No, I would say I know people, I get a lot of this when we do classes. Everything that was said is true. You're trying to compete at a specific level. And so your competition is working towards broadcast quality audio at home. And so you kind of want to meet at that level at least. You don't have to spend a crazy amount of money, but you should at least invest in decent gear. And you can chat with us during classes at the lab for that information.
Great. Because we're in the middle of the pandemic, we have a lot of questions about people. You already covered it a little bit, Keith, but really worrying about sound quality because there are sirens. You're doing it in spaces that you didn't intend to do it. You didn't really plan for this full setup. So let's say you need to take care of this and you need to take care of it right now, and you're doing it with the limitations of this moment. Different answer than might be at another time. What would you guys do? Eric, Keith, somebody want to jump in with that?
Sound isolation specifically?
Yeah.
So, well, it's a really hard thing to deal with, but really here's the first thing to realize, that if you see light, sound gets through. So in a sense, it's like you're trying to build a fish tank, something that's going to be airtight. And if you start approaching airtight, you're going to start approaching soundproof. It's extremely hard and it's extremely expensive. And so typically the first things you want to do is find a room that has all interior walls. That's like just going with what is in your advantage to begin with. So get a room with all interior walls. Maybe it's got a solid core door, and you can find various products at Home Depot to start to cover that gap underneath the door with a good sealed weather strip door seal. That's probably about all you're going to be able to do without getting into money. And maybe the first place to deal with it, and the easiest place without destroying your house and your life and hiring contractors, is just to kind of bite the bullet and buy something like a Whisper Room or a vocalbooth.com booth, or going all the way up to an Audio Bricks booth. But you're immediately jumping into something that's at least $3,000 to $5,000. I think if you try to do soundproofing on your own, you're easily, for a single room, you're probably going to spend $1,000 without even realizing it. And if you try to do it yourself, it's really easy to fail. Sound is annoying, and it will get through. And especially weed whackers and air, leaf blowers and stuff. It's like, forget it, because it's a joke, but it's not a joke. And so the joke about a whisper room is like, why do they call it a whisper room? And it's because everyone outside the room has to whisper. They will not kill all the sound, so it's layers. If you put a whisper room inside a room that has all interior walls, or if you have a basement or something, don't put the whisper room next to a big giant window. You're not helping it. So, but it's not, the whisper room alone will not solve all sound issues, sound isolation issues. A leaf blower will get through that thing, I promise you.
And I'll just jump in and speak from my own experience. I had a job where I was narrating a video game, and we had about 200 pages of single-spaced stories that I was reading over the course of 4 or 5 sessions from home, surprise. And before I had a studio, before I built the studio in my home. So working from a closet at the center of my home with the microphone facing me away from the street. It was the middle of summer and I had to make sure to turn off the air conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
I had central air in my house. You can't have this going on underneath. So it was a sweaty 6 or 8 sessions of voiceover, but it got done because a good mic, a good preamp. I did it into my laptop. We had the client over Google Hangouts and Skype, which was easy enough for him to give me direction. So that was kind of the low rent solution. Again, I treated the walls of my closet inside another room with the door closed and with the air conditioning off. Like I said, hot, sweaty, but totally doable.
The question is, what were you wearing?
Oh no. Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to just, we had a question about somebody, and I'm going to toss this one to Eric, about doing audiobooks and what the foundation might do with that, and what are the differences between audiobooks and the stuff we've talked about today. We've got a question from a member about that. Could you take that one for us, Eric?
The differences? Well, in the VO Lab, for us, we don't necessarily allow or have the ability to allow audiobooks to be recorded in their entirety in the lab itself, because of the fact that they take sometimes extended periods of time to complete. So you can certainly record the auditions in the lab and send those off, but that's a different experience and different process. But the software packages we talked about, whether it's Audacity or Twisted Wave, Reaper, those Pro Tools, those can all be used to record your audiobooks. And the setups are virtually, they're the same. It doesn't change no matter if you're doing commercial VO or if you're focusing on promo. Audiobooks fall in line with the same general setup for your studio and the gear you're going to need. It's just that make sure that you, before jumping heavy into audiobooks, that you take some classes and see what it's about and make sure that it's right for you, because it is a pretty arduous process to record. A lot of times when you're starting out, you will be the narrator, you'll be the person required for applying the quality control, doing all the editing, and ensuring that the files are ready for digital distribution. So a lot of that falls on your shoulders initially when you're getting started in audiobooks as an actor. So keep that in mind. It's a great, growing, booming area of voiceover, lots of opportunity there, but it's something that's not for everyone. But if you can jump in and you're content to read for hours on end in a booth, you can have a great time and you can make a little money.
I'll say one thing about audiobooks. Pretty much the workflow and the thing to get good at is, especially if you're doing it yourself, is a punch and roll, which I'm sure you guys teach. And so that starts to change what software you pick. And that dynamic, it's a little bit harder when you do it remotely, but a good engineer will have that also ready to go so you can still punch and roll over a remote connection as well.
Yeah. Sure.
Great, thank you. We've got a question from Regina, who is asking about GarageBand and is new to this, but has experience with GarageBand and wanted to get some clarification on that.
I'll say 2 things really quick and then I'm done with GarageBand. It only does 44.1. And so this is the primary problem with GarageBand. Besides that, it's pretty much a DAW like most other DAWs. Hides things, makes it a little bit maybe too easy to use, depending on your level and what you're looking for. But the biggest issue with GarageBand is that it locks you completely into 44.1, and that might not be appropriate for your work that you're delivering.
I will say from my own experience, I used GarageBand for years with no problems. Did a couple of demos for myself on GarageBand. Entirely possible to do that. But that's a really important, I mean, as I'm now starting to deliver from home, 48K is common. I had a session a few weeks ago that needed 96 just to be super safe. So you're not going to get that out of GarageBand. You're going to need to go to Reaper or I don't know that I would recommend Pro Tools. It's just such a I mean, I don't know, we're not getting into endorsements here, but it's a program for music professionals. It's built with it takes up a lot of space on your computer. It eats up a lot of RAM on your computer. Mostly for what we do, Twisted Wave works pretty great. But the functionality, if you want to start getting into maybe wading into music production, maybe creating a demo for yourself where you're going to have 2 or 3 tracks of music and sound effects that are going to be in there, you'll want something with a little more functionality, like a GarageBand or Reaper, or Audition, you know, any of the programs. Reaper is just it's a tiny little powerful program. You can have your emails open, you can have your other stuff open and run Reaper at the same time. Same with Twisted Wave. I mean,
I'll say one thing about like Pro Tools and whatnot. Depends on how close to the production process you get, but it's true. Pretty much it's the standard for all post-production in music. Probably 90% of the content you hear has touched Pro Tools at some point. All these programs, you don't have to use all of them. So you open up Reaper, you use the record button, the rewind button, the same 3 buttons you use in Twisted Wave. You can make Reaper just as easy to use as Twisted Wave. You can make Pro Tools just as easy to use as Twisted Wave. One thing that helps when you are in something like Pro Tools, depending on who you're working with, is that if you're in Pro Tools and they're in Pro Tools, they can say, hey, go to this menu. I know exactly what you need to do, or I need you to do this or that. And so it might not be, it depends on how some people like to dig into things. And if you're going to dig into a DAW and put effort into a DAW, the reality is that Logic, Reaper, Audition is not simple either. It has found its way into the voiceover industry through the roads of radio, but it is no less complex, or they're all the same. There's some reasons that maybe if you're going to learn a DAW, dig into Pro Tools just because it will keep on coming up. And that is sort of the end of all DAWs these days.
and I'll say too that if you've learned Reaper, or you've learned Logic, or you've learned
use it.
Twisted Wave, there is no reason to not.
Yep.
Fat Boy Slim recorded his first 3 albums on Cubase on an old Atari computer.
Yep.
Because that's what he was familiar with from working on recording software coming out of the 90s. So he kept his floppy disks on hand and put out 3 records on that. So don't feel like, if you're comfortable with Audacity, stick with Audacity. Stick with what you're comfortable with, that which will give you the opportunity to focus on your performance and not on fixing problems in your chain.
True.
You're muted.
Me? No.
No.
We've got time for
Oh, there
one
you go.
last question, and I'm going to ask just this last one. Let's say that you want to send, this is from Kate, a sample of audio from our home setup to get somebody's professional opinion on it just before they get into the mix. Is there a way that they can do that? Is there a class for that?
George the Tech does that service.
Yeah.
I don't know about what the lab
does it as well. Yeah, so we have, again, because we're virtual right now on all of our classes and all of our booth sessions are online. We do have an online booth session that you can book. So if you want your recording to be listened to, you can follow the protocols that we went through earlier. You can get to that page once you have eligibility, and you can essentially book an online booth session where you can send your recorded audio file in and have that reviewed, and our engineers will take a listen, give you some tips on how to clean it up, or maybe they'll clean it up and send it back to you. It just depends. But it's a pretty full service program, and it's Mike, Greg, and Ann in Los Angeles. Ann runs the online booth sessions, and once you complete the orientation, or get into the orientation, sorry, we'll explain all these different options to you at that point as well. So it's a pretty full service setup.
Great. And Eric, I'm just going to ask you, because I know you know the answer to this. What's the cost for that?
That is FREE, absolutely free.
There you go.
Best price around. Indeed.
There you go. Thank you, Eric. Okay, why don't I let all my guests just do a couple quick wrap-up comments. We're just about to be over and out for the day, and then I'll come back real quick. Let's, Robert, you want to start the wrap-up?
Yeah, so, well, again, thank everybody for joining, and I really hope this was useful. And Just to recap, our Source Elements position in this whole thing is essentially to make that remote session happen for you and for your engineer. And really, we have services that start with Source Connect Now, which is free on the Chrome web browser, just like any other Chrome service. So why not use the best price point around, which is free? And then we have excellent support. We have at this point 24 hours of the globe covered in support, email, and we're there for you. And you can go through the product lines all the way up through doing real-time remote ADR sessions, and hopefully we grow with you in your career. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Robert. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. Having worked at the lab for a long time, I don't think anything like it exists. There's a lot of technology, a great physical space, which hopefully at some point we'll get back to, but a wealth of knowledge and a real desire to teach and assist. And I think that's a unique thing in this world. So I would say take advantage of all of the programs that are offered. I know the software classes are fantastic. We go into pretty great depth on how to use the programs, how to hook up gear. And then some of the acting classes are also great. So keep to the space there, look on the website, check in with the classes, sign up for stuff, and hopefully I'll see you around.
Yeah, we're looking forward to being back in person too, Mike. How about you, Eric?
Thanks again for involving us in this. It's been a lot of fun to share some information and knowledge about what we do. We've learned over the years, as Mike sort of stated, that all kinds of people come through the lab itself, whether you're an absolute beginner, completely phobic about technology, someone who's just curious, or someone who's been doing it for a while and just want to have a new place to record and to tap into some expertise. It's a really good spot to be in. So it's always interesting when people don't know that it exists. So thank you all for providing this opportunity for us to share with the membership that we've been here for a while. And we are here to help. We really are committed to ensuring that you as an actor get the services and the knowledge and expertise you need to be competitive in this space. So come see us.
Great. Keith?
I just think this has been an enormously informative and a great door opening. I'll tell you something that I say to students when I'm teaching, which is think about voiceover not as something that's just tacked on to your career, but as something that is you want to treat it like you're going for a master's degree. So you're going to want to avail yourself of classes to help yourself get better. You're going to want to do your homework, and you're going to want to wait until you are ready in order to do your thesis, which will be demos and heading out into the professional world. So rushing in, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but like I said at the beginning, COVID hasn't slowed down voiceover at all. We're working as much, if not more, than we have in the past. While commercial production is on hiatus, voiceover for commercials is not. It's still happening. And I hear a lot from the members I represent as chair of the National VO Committee, some concern that our voiceover department's hours have been cut by a third. And I don't know whether that's just an across the board SAG-AFTRA cut, but with the explosion that's happening in VO, to have our staff's hours reduced has made life harder for members of this union. So if you're interested in letting your voice be known about how you feel about having our staff's hours cut, now there's always somebody in the office, just not as many people as there used to be. So get in touch with voiceover at sagaftra.org, goes right to the office, or you can email Gabrielle or David White or Ray Rodriguez and let them know that you'd like to see for the one portion of our industry that hasn't slowed down, that's still roaring forward, that has 5,000 people on a webinar, twice as many as any other webinar we've done, that we need the staff support in order to get more work, keep the work flowing, and keep us all employed. So that'll be my one political note and everything else. Otherwise, I just encourage you to keep going and focusing on honing your craft.
And thank you all. And just so everybody knows, SAG-AFTRA is very much open for business. We do have some staff on some limited hours just because we are in the middle of a pandemic, but we are still processing residuals. We are still in the middle of negotiations, working on safety, and all of our departments are actually up and running as we speak in terms of making sure that members have the ability to be heard. So just so you know that, want to make sure everybody does. Also really want to thank today the SAG-AFTRA Foundation for their participation in this webinar, all of our guests who were fantastic. And in terms of our guests, I got to just say you all were just terrific, and it just provided such a wide gamut from the folks, as Keith mentioned, just starting out and trying to figure out how to do it at home, all the way on down to figuring out what broadcast quality looks like in our lives when we're sometimes even in our studio apartments. So really great panel today. You should follow SAG-AFTRA and the SAG-AFTRA Foundation on YouTube. Join the YouTube channel so you can see all these different events that we are bringing to members even during the pandemic. Stay tuned for more President's Taskforce on Education, Outreach, and Engagement panels and webinars. Subscribe to those channels and follow, like, retweet. It really does help. So all the members that may or may not be reading their emails, which of course I would wish they do all the time, but make sure that they have the accessibility to all of that and share it on your social media. So thank you all. We hope you're all having a really wonderful day, and we will see you next time. Thanks a bunch.